Bluey is a show with so many secrets and mysteries that it's almost unfair. Every time I watch it, I feel like I notice something new. But a lot of those things are still unanswered questions. Like, what will happen in Bluey's future? We've had some important episodes in the series that touch on Bluey's future, and it's not like they mention it in a line of dialogue or something. It's that they literally show it. It's normal for a show to have plenty of flashbacks, those moments that show the past, like scenes of Bluey learning to walk, or Bandit talking about his childhood at school, or describing what his teenage life was like in the 80s. But time jumps into the future? That's something I never expected in a show like Bluey. Go ahead and add that to the list of things no one saw coming. This show always surprises us in that way, doesn't it? But with so many unanswered questions, my biggest concern comes from the recent open letter written by creator Joe Brum on the official website. He said he's struggling to continue the series because he's finding it hard to connect with Bluey's age and world right now. He also mentioned that he wrote the episode The Sign as his farewell to the series. However, this happened at the same time as the announcement of the first Bluey movie, which he himself wrote. So, the question remains, will he manage to reconnect, or if this really is his goodbye? Which unanswered questions from the series will he address in the movie? So grab your popcorn and an ice-cold soda, because it's time to revisit the biggest unanswered questions about Bluey's future, right here on Zigzag. You probably remember that episode where Bluey builds a fort in the middle of the woods while camping with her parents, right? This is the episode where Bluey meets Jean-Luc, the little dog who speaks French. They spend several days together, playing by building an improvised hut with sticks and leaves, and trying to communicate with drawings on a rock to come up with a plan to catch a wild boar. Which, as usual, turns out to be poor Bandit. But eventually, they have to say goodbye, and Jean-Luc leaves before Bluey realizes that their first hug was actually their last. And you remember how sad Bluey was, right? After all, she lost a friend. But Chili teaches her that sometimes the memories we make with people who come and go quickly from our lives are the moments we should cherish forever. But then, at the end of the episode, there's a surprise. There's a time jump. And now, Bluey is a teenager, reading a book under the tree she planted with Jean-Luc when they were kids. And who shows up just before the episode ends? That's right, Jean-Luc! And now he speaks English. So it's not hard to imagine that Bluey stayed in his mind, just like he stayed in hers, because they shared that brief but meaningful friendship during those days. I bet he was excited to return to Australia and reunite with that friend he made years ago during their childhood. And it's precisely at this point that a new season, or maybe a new Bluey series, aimed at a slightly older audience could take place. A series about Bluey, Bingo, and all their friends as teenagers. Would you like to see a series with this theme? Then type your opinion in the comments with the hashtag teen so we can know what you think. As we saw at the end of the Jean-Luc episode, Bluey prepares to read a book under the tree she and her friend planted in the past. This already tells us something important. Bluey likes to read. What kind of books do you think Bluey is into? Since she showed a lot of creativity as a child, I imagine she enjoys reading stories. And since teenagers don't play the same way kids do, her creativity is now likely more internalized, staying within her mind. One great way to let that creativity be nurtured is through entertainment. Movies, shows, games, books, YouTube videos. And now that teenagers face many internal dilemmas, with emotions running high, and it often being hard to understand what's happening, reading might be the perfect outlet for Bluey to make sense of what she's going through. Since Bluey was always the rebellious and bossy sister, the one who dominated the games and often took what Bingo wanted, maybe now she's become the opposite. Now Bluey is more thoughtful, keeps to herself, and spends time with her favorite hobbies. Of course, this doesn't mean she's become a sad person. As we can see in the final scene of the Jean-Luc episode, she still has the same energy that makes Bluey, well, Bluey. But the way she expresses this to the world is now a bit different, you know? And one cool thing we could explore in episodes about teenage Bluey is which theories about her future relationships might come true. We already know she has this quiet friendship with Jean-Luc from the past, But how would their friendship look now that they can communicate since he's learned to speak English? Did he move to Australia permanently? Or is he just visiting? Would Bluey travel to France to visit his home? Or would they not be that close and remain just good acquaintances? Another episode that jumps forward in time and shows the future of our favorite little blue healer is Surprise from the 3rd season. This is the episode where we see Bluey mature a little and ease up, just a little, on Bandit, who's trying his best to give attention to both his daughters while also watching the sports match on TV. Bluey's maturity here shows when, at the end, she lets go of her game to join Bingo's and give Bandit a break, though he has a minor meltdown and starts venting to a tennis ball. This moment of growth ties perfectly to the final scene of the episode, where we see her as an adult with an extra surprise, a little pup waiting outside with Grandpa Bandit. Bluey's child is yet another unanswered question, and we're not sure if there will be a new season of the show, and if there is, whether they'll show more of this time period. Roxy is the character we see briefly in the final episode of the 3rd season, getting ready to tag Bandit. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, so we chose the name Roxy because it works well for both cases. Roxanne if it's a girl, or Roxwell if it's a boy. Continuing the tradition of naming characters with names that could easily be dog names, like Bandit, Chili, Bluey, and Bingo. Roxy is a nickname that fits perfectly in all those situations. Can you imagine the moment when Bluey and her husband choose the name for their new baby? Man, that would definitely be such an emotional and tear-jerking moment. Something the Ludo Studio has already proven they're amazing at throughout this series, right? So, imagine this show as a continuation of Bluey, with Roxy and their new friends and relatives taking on the role of Bluey in the original series, and Bluey and her husband stepping into the same roles as Chili and Bandit. Can you picture Bluey as a mom? If you can, make sure to follow the channel to stay up to date on the hottest Bluey news and theories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. We've already talked about the possibility of Bluey ending up with Jean-Luc, but another theory is that Bluey might end up with Mackenzie, who is a much closer friend to her and appears in several episodes, unlike Jean-Luc, who only shows up in one. Mackenzie is one of Bluey's best male friends and appears in many episodes. We can see how well they get along whenever he's on screen. And what makes this theory even stronger is the appearance of Bluey's child, the floppy ear, the fur pattern. It all looks very similar, as if it were a mix of Bluey and Mackenzie. Of course, the darker fur points to Jean-Luc, who has the same dark blue color, but in the case of the Mackenzie theory, the baby's dark blue fur could be because Bluey's blue mixed with Mackenzie's black, and when you mix blue and black, you get a darker blue. Had you thought of that before?